Good afternoon. Welcome to the TCPalm editorial board meeting to interview candidates in the election for Vero Beach City Council. This is our third of 3 recorded meetings that we've had. I'm Larry Reisman, columnist and community editor, and I'm joined by fellow editorial board members Adam Neal, our editor and news director, Blake Fontenay, columnist, and Louise Philippine and Terry Schlitt, our reader advisory board members. Special thanks to our candidates for meeting with us today and streamlining the process by completing questionnaires ahead of time. Board members have reviewed them. Questionnaires and replays of our editorial board interviews can be found at tcpalm.com/elections. At the conclusion of this interview, editorial board members will discuss possibly writing an editorial to recommend a candidate in this race. I'll lead the questioning and open it up to other editorial board members at the end. We might end up having more of a conversation than just a simple Q&A. Our goal is to be completed in 45 to 50 minutes or so, and because of time constraints, we ask that the candidates keep their answers concise. So let's start the afternoon off with Ray Neville. Can you please give us one example of what you've done over the past year that proves you are doing more than just talking about helping the Indian River Lagoon?
Well, one of the things that immediately comes to mind is I put forth a really strong effort towards doing a stronger and more effective review of the vessels that are parked, if you will, or anchored or moored in our lagoon, and a much stronger emphasis on checking those boats and making sure they're not discharging into the Indian River Lagoon. That can be it's a temptation because it's so darn easy to do. And I think that our police department's done an excellent job. They've acquired a new boat, and they're going to spend a lot more time on the water, making sure that things like that, we minimize the effect of those things. That's the one thing I think that comes to mind immediately.
Thank you. Charles Wilson, can you tell us the one thing that you've done over the past year that proves you are doing more than just talking about helping the lagoon? Looks like Charlie is muted there. Okay, it looks like we're having technical issues there. Let's go to Tracy Zudan.
So thanks for having the forum. I really appreciate it. It's nice to see everybody's face. So on a personal level, what we've done at our house is we have done the step septic system. We do live on the water. So we have actually done some of the oyster mats around the edge of our piece of water. We've also spent the time putting together a rainwater retention project for our own landscaping so that 99% of the water stays within our own yard and does not go into the lagoon. So we're looking forward to starting that project now that the plans are done for that.
I'm muted there. Okay. Thanks for answering that question. It looks like Charlie is trying to get reconnected. So let's start with you, Tracy, on this next question, and we'll try to get back to him later. What do you think should be the future of the city's stormwater utility?
So the stormwater utility, I think sitting on a shelf right now is the perfect place for it. I think that you can get creative with some ideas to do projects that have the biggest bang for the buck, like the planting of native plants and doing rainwater projects like they did around City Hall. I think you could do those on a larger scale and then continue on with the step septic system. So those are probably the biggest things right now. I don't think that we need the stormwater utility tax at this time. I think actually taxing our residents while we're doing economic recovery from the pandemic would be disrespectful to our residents.
Thank you. What about after the economic recovery?
Still think that that gives us time to actually get creative and have some healthy dialogue on other projects that would cost less money than actually raising taxes for the stormwater utility.
Thank you. Okay, Ray, what do you think should be the future of the city's stormwater utility?
Well, I think the stormwater utility is a vital component in if you will, the whole process of trying to get the lagoon's health back to where it should be. Stormwater, with millions of gallons of partially polluted water dump into our lagoon every year, and much of it goes if you treated. We have collection locations along the lagoon, but there are many, many places where we don't. And that each one of those individually contributes a small amount. In its aggregate, it's a lot, and it's very, very bad for the lagoon. So by virtue of having, if you will, the stormwater utility, a couple of things. One, the assessments for the stormwater is much more fair. The more you contribute in terms of stormwater to our stormwater distribution system, the more you pay. And there are no exceptions for persons or organizations that in fact contribute to this. So persons with a really large, expensive home would be paying a lot more for something they didn't necessarily would be contributing to, which seems a bit unfair to me. And likewise, someone who is contributing a lot should be paying to do it. Now, there are processes for mitigation. So if you have a large amount of water escaping your property, you can mitigate and then you can adjust to it. Secondly, and just as importantly, when we have a stormwater utility, then our opportunity for grants to facilitate the implementation of some of the large projects that may come along in time can be more easily obtained. Grants through general fund taxation is difficult to get has been for stormwater projects in the past.
Thank you, Ray. I don't see Charlie back yet, so we'll start with you on this, Ray. How do you propose the city end its longstanding tourist tax and utilities disagreements with Indian River County and/or Indian River Shores?
You know, it's truly regrettable that the relationship between the county and the city has gotten as difficult as it is now. And finding our way back to comedy, if you will, is going to be a challenge. One of the things, this may sound a little odd, but the thing I thought about, we need to get to know each other better. The city council members and the commissioners and, of course, the council members of the town. I was thinking, as well as Orchid and Fellsmere, I think we ought to have lunch once a quarter. And then quarterly move it around, if you will, just to get to know one another and understand what their problems are, understand what our problems are, and perhaps over time, because relationships are so important in these things. If you're separated from the environment, you can take a different perspective than if you're involved with and know about the issues that, for example, our city has, and likewise with the county. So I don't know, that's one of the things that occurs to me that might be a decent thing to make an attempt at trying to do. I was really disappointed when the county attorney encouraged the county commission not to talk to us individually. I see no harm in that. And our attorney said he didn't see any harm in it either. Maybe, in fact, we could make a breakthrough in terms of what we're trying to get done. The longer we spend time in this adversarial posture, one, it creates an adversarial atmosphere in the two organizations, which is not good. And secondly, it just takes so much time away from the much more important things that we're trying to get done in this city. And as you know, we have a pretty lean staff in the city of Vero Beach. Monty has no backup. It's him and our attorney. And when he's working on that, he's not working on other stuff, which is really an unfortunate side effect of these multiple lawsuits that are looming before us.
Thanks, Ray. Tracy?
I think that Ray brings up a good point. It is about relationships, but I've already been working on that. So I've actually met with elected officials in Indian River Shores. I had lunch with Susan Adams today. I actually have spoken with Joe Flesher and gotten his endorsement actually to move forward in a collaborative effort to solve this issue. So I think that actually having those meetings is important, actually building those relationships. And in a lot of ways, you're actually repairing some of those bruised relationships. And if you don't have those relationships going into something like this, then it's going to be really difficult to have that consensus and collaboration moving forward. So I've already been working on it, meeting with the different elected officials in all the surrounding areas, including the county and Indian River Shores.
Thanks. Thanks, Tracy. Just seeing if Charlie's back yet. He's not back yet. I'll start with you, Tracy, on this next question. Can you talk about your vision for the three corners the city owns at 17th Street and Indian River Boulevard? The three corners the city owns at 17th Street and Indian River Boulevard.
Sure. So I remember going through the process of the charrettes and the Standing O plan that really brought the community together to come up with a vision of things that they wanted to see there. It's not a master plan of what has to go there, but the community came together saying what they would like to see there. But what you really need to do is bring a developer in and see what's feasible in that area. So until you get that, you're not really going to know what's actually going to be able to be taken from the Standing O plan and put there on the property. I really like Taylor's idea of bringing in a marina or something like that where you can come off the water, because Riverside Cafe really is the only place in Vero that you can kind of do that. So it would be nice to have something like that there as well.
Thanks, Tracy. So when you talk about marina, you're talking about, are you talking about boat slips? You talk like is in the plan, or are you talking about a boat launch area? Or?
So you would actually have to see what's going to be healthy for the lagoon there, based on what the the experts, the developers can do with that piece. But primarily, if you may not need like a whole marina, it may just be a boating up to, if there's restaurants there, or having a place that families can come and do things there. But being able to get there by way of water would be something nice to see there.
Thank you. Ray, what's your vision for that site, or the sites? I'd say the three corners.
Well, I guess we'll call it the two corners, actually, because the third piece of property has not been part of it. But I'm excited, actually, much the same way that Tracy is, about the standing ovation plan. I like the idea of generating, using the interior of the old power plant. It's spectacular on the inside, from an industrial kind of a look to it. And I think some really excellent architect and designer could turn that into something really special. Likewise, the green space that would be in front of it, or behind it, if you will, facing the lagoon, and then the variety of little shops along a walkway, and then winding up with like 3 or 4 restaurants and a wonderful promenade, if you will, right at the water's edge, would be outstanding. The plan did, in fact, include day parking for boats, and I fully support that. I think that's one of the great things we'll be able to do, to allow people on vessels to come to visit. And the wonderful thing is, we'd have people coming from Fort Pierce and from Melbourne and St. Sebastian, bringing some of their money into town, which is always a good thing. On the south side, we're making great progress with Youth Sailing Foundation establishing their new facility, and we don't know. No one has yet acknowledged any real useful use for the tanks. So it's likely that one or both of those may come down. that'll be a decision that comes on along later. We're really anxious to make sure we get the remainder of the wastewater plant removed. The longer that sits there, the more difficult it is, for example, to get a development on the north side. So, but the overall plan, I think, is exceptional, and I think the city will be greatly benefited by having it there.
Thank you, Ray. So let's start with you on this next question. Can you please name up to 3 transportation related, and how you define transportation is up to you, but transportation related issues that the city should make a priority to address?
Well, you know, I remember the 19th Place and 20th Street before the Twin Pairs were here. 19th Place was a beautiful boulevard, tree lined, if you will, and had a median in the middle, acknowledging the fact that that's not something that could ever return. But in fact, when the state decided that it had to enlarge those 2 roads, I think it resulted in a major taking on behalf of the property owners on either side of it. And if you take a look at our new Arts Village to the south, those properties started to deteriorate not much long after the Twin Pairs were established. And there's a large, sizable vacant lot that still hasn't been used on the north side of 19th. So it tells you that the businesses aren't interested in using that space, which is concerning. So my belief is number one, we have to calm this down. Now, I'm waiting for a safety report on the part of the Florida Power, the FDOT, to tell us whether or not how we can mitigate, if you will, some of the speed along those two roads, and also continue to have a fair flow of traffic at the same time. But I think I know that when I'm in that area, a lot of cars, vehicles do really speed by. In my office at City Hall, you can just hear them, and you know that they're going well beyond the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit, which I think is a bit extreme as well. Take a look at Sebastian, take a look at Fort Pierce. Those are actually 4-lane roads, 2 on each side, but do have turn lanes, and with a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. And frankly, I think they get along pretty well. So I'm anxiously awaiting the FDOT recommendations for us. I think that we can make some major improvements to that. That's the big one for me. Likewise, when all that traffic is headed to the beach, we're not going to be able to expand Beachland Boulevard. So we're going to have serious difficulty in making our beaches available as growth accumulates in the county and people come to the beach. We need to be making plans for being able to move traffic on either side of the Barber Bridge and making the 17th Street Bridge, if you will, a more accessible and more primary means of transport. Maybe 16th Street could be enlarged and move some traffic that way, so that when people are moving across to the island, we could have it in a more effective manner. One of the things I've asked Monty to do, for example, is to put up signage indicating beaches to the south beach, as opposed to beaches going straight ahead on 60 up to Humiston, or actually to Sexton Plaza. People still love going to Sexton Plaza and going to the beach there, and it just clogs up. It's a huge parking issue and traffic issue as well.
Thanks, Ray. Tracy, can you talk about up to 3 transportation issues you see that the city should pay attention to?
Absolutely. So, parking's always been a hot topic, and it, goes in waves, and usually it becomes a hot topic when it's season and we have an influx of people that come here. But I think instead of doing the same old thing where we're putting out flyers because we have a lack of parking, we need to actually be proactive and think ahead. And by saying that, I mean, like, if we're developing 3 corners, which is going to potentially bring our community together, and unite us as a community, beachside and mainland. I think it's important to plan ahead for potential transportation and traffic and parking issues in that area, because you're also going to potentially have the opportunity to make that a tourism attraction. So it will not only unite our community, it will actually draw people to come here, spend money, and leave. And so you're going to have to think ahead now instead of when it actually happens, 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, of how are we going to solve that issue now? So I think Three Corners is a great example of why you need to be proactive and plan ahead strategically for things like parking. When we did the parking survey and the parking issue last time, and they were talking about things like paid parking and shared parking and things like that, nobody really actually looked at following through on some of those ideas, like partnering with the side businesses and using the common area there as additional parking. That would be an inexpensive way, or a biggest bang for your buck way to add additional parking. So there were things that were in that parking survey project that were some good ideas that you could implement almost right away, and that would mitigate some of the parking over on beachside. And I think you're always going to have, as downtown revives, parking is going to be an issue again there. And so I think you need to go ahead and plan ahead now for what the parking and transportation issues are going to be there. And there was a lot of talk about, near the airport, and we have a distillery that's going in there, and you've got Walking Tree. So you need to be thinking now of those ideas of how are we going to solve the parking issues there.
Charlie, looks like you're back. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to try to get you caught up here. The last question we had was, I asked the candidates about what were up to 3 transportation issues they thought might be important for the city to address. Would you be able to answer that, or are you frozen? Can you hear me? Yeah, it looks like you're frozen there, Charlie. We'll go on to the next question for Tracy Zudans. Is the current City Hall a suitable place to do city business for the foreseeable future? If not, what do you envision?
So I've been to City Hall many times, and I think that it's a bigger footprint than our city government needs, to be honest. It'll do in the interim right now, but you can think ahead and are you going to spend your money repairing a building that doesn't reflect the image that the city of Vero Beach wants to have? Or are you going to go ahead and downsize your footprint and potentially rent from, if Three Corners gets developed, could you rent office space from there? So I think that, although the City Hall is fine for now, I think it's a larger footprint than we need. And I think we should look for other options down the road that would cost less money and encompass a smaller footprint.
Thanks, Ray.
Yeah, it's I've been talking with the staff about the hall. It's a labyrinth, if you will, and a person that first visited, if they can find their way to where they're going, it's remarkable. So there's there's a lot that we can do to make it better, and it's all chopped up. As you know, it was 2 buildings that were merged together into one when the police moved across the street. And so there's elevation issues with the 2 buildings as well. But we just finished doing a $1 million repair to the roof. And so I think for the near term, maybe to the midterm, the best we can do is to try to do some, if you will, some cosmetic changes and make the area more attractive and more easily navigated, if you will, from different offices. We do have a lot of storage on the first floor, and we can't take it to the second floor because of weight loading. I think we need to offload that storage, if you will, to a proper storage facility off-site. But that's something we're still working on trying to figure out how to do.
Thanks, Ray. Next question, we'll start with you. Can you please succinctly give a specific example of a time when you achieved a long-term professional goal that required collaboration with others?
You want me to do that succinctly, is that right?
Yes, you can.
Well, I guess I'll revert back to my military career. I retired as an Air Force colonel, and you don't do that by yourself. And if you think you are, you're fooling yourself. And so I built, I thought, a very strong team of people when I was in that business, and all they did was make me look good, and it helped me succeed over the many various ranks that I achieved. So I think team building and working together, cordiality, notwithstanding the fact we have to get the job done and get it done on time and get it done right, but good teamwork, I think, pays big dividends. And I've thought that all my life. And I believe that while we're working in the city. And I think we've got a fabulous team, and our staff. They do a superb job. And they're be applauded. We remind them every day how great they are, because they do a wonderful job for us. But I think it's teamwork that over time has benefited me personally. I don't know if that's answering specifically your question.
Thanks, Ray. I appreciate that. Tracy?
Of my proudest moments would be participating in the process of changing management at the hospital to Cleveland Clinic. That took a lot of collaboration between a lot of different entities, and the process of RFP and interviewing different management hospitals to come over and take over management. That process in general took a long time, teamwork, a collaborative effort, and I was really, really proud to be a part of that. So also bringing robust healthcare back to the Gifford Health Center and being a part of that and continuing to watch and see that be successful. That I was honored to be a part of that as well.
Thanks, Tracy. We're going to try to go to Charlie. The question was, can you please succinctly give a specific example of a time when you achieved a long-term professional goal that required collaboration with others? Are you able to hear us? Charlie? Did you hear us? Okay.
Yeah, sorry about all the trouble. If I'm still having trouble, so what? Yeah, after you, I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
I'll try something else.
Okay, thank you. We will go on to the next question then.
Oh, you can. That shows you all of do anything to avoid a Larry Reed question.
Okay, let's go to Tracy for the next question. The Florida legislature and its governor have stripped local governments of several home rule provisions over the past few years on issues from short-term rentals to mask ordinances. Do you agree with their efforts?
So in general, I'm for home rule, with the exception that, local government kind of usurping its powers to take away private citizens' rights. So that's my succinct answer for that.
Okay. What about the short-term rental issue? Let's just talk about that one specifically.
So in regard to the short-term rental situation, I think that home rule is generally where you want to be, but I think it's really hard to enforce the short-term rental situation, because even though short-term rentals in general here are frowned upon, you still have them popping up. And so unless you have a consistent enforcement of what the will of the people is when it comes to short-term rentals, you're going to be hard pressed to follow through with that.
Thank you. Ray?
Overreached in several cases. Most recently, not most recently, but this year, they implemented this policy that it permits homeowners to have businesses in their homes, and with very little oversight by, if you will, from the zoning perspective. I think that's a real problem, primarily in conjunction with the neighbors and the consequence of that sort of action. And also the short-term rentals has been a major issue. I think if you talk with the folks in South Beach, you'll find that it's a serious problem for them, mainly because there are no real rules against it on the part of the county. I think the city, on the other hand, our code enforcement people do a really good job. They actually monitor the Airbnb and VRBO. And when they find instances where there's what they think might be a situation of a short-term rental, they'll pursue it. I think they've done a really good job about that, frankly. And there's a lot of folks that will, myself included, because I've seen it locally where I live, we will notify our code enforcement and they'll take action. So I think we're doing pretty well. Can't get them all. And when the real issue about this is when 15 or 20 people pack into a house for a weekend. And we've had that on Dahlia, for example, which turned out to be a terrible situation for both the homeowner and the neighbors. And that's the one gigantic example that people think about when you visualize kids coming up here to take a holiday in Vero Beach. And there's the homeowner is not present to supervise or nearby to do anything about it should it get out of hand. So I'm all for our home rule. I think the city does an excellent job in not overreaching and not being overbearing in its policies. I think we're doing pretty much what we need to do.
Thank you, Ray. Let's start with you on the next question. Would you vote to increase taxes if necessary?
Well, we lost a significant revenue source when we lost the power system. We sold the power system. The strategy for working our way out of that was twofold in terms of how it presented to the public. And one of them was the expectation that property values would increase over time. And by golly, are we seeing that now? The other expectation was that we would find economies in our budget. The unfortunate aspect of that latter part is that those kind of economies are hard to come by, since most, if you will, of where our revenue goes is toward salaries for our staff and for the people that take care of our roads and our landscaping and our recreation and things of that sort. And I think I'm pretty confident that our staff, if you will, is pretty darn lean. We have added staff, if you will, to the water and sewer department because of impositions of state law. But in terms of city staffing, since the big reduction of, I think, around 70 people during the Great Recession, we haven't actually added more than 1 or 2 people back since then. And I think we've done a really fine job of, if you will, holding the line. That being the case, where we have deferred maintenance on things, deferred the stormwater issues, for example. If for whatever reason the stormwater utility were to leave, we may very likely have to raise taxes. We were in a situation earlier this year where we couldn't afford to buy body cameras because we didn't have the funding, and that seems just really wrong. We need those things, especially in the era that we're living in today. So yes, if you have to raise taxes, you have to raise taxes. If you look at our village, it's 2.5. If you look at Stewart's village, it's 3.5.
Okay, thanks, Ray. We'll go to Charlie. It looks like Charlie's trying to get back. Charlie,
Trying.
would there come a
I'm
time where
trying.
you would raise taxes?
If it doesn't work this time, I give up.
Charlie, would there come a time where you
No.
raise taxes? Never?
No, it's, I don't know if you can hear me or not. We've had a 25% increase in property values over the last 3 years. If we don't have enough money to do what we need to do, it's our own fault.
Thank you, Charlie. Tracy?
Say that I agree that the increase in property values gives you almost $500,000 every year, and that's been fairly consistent, especially in the real estate market right now. I think you have to live within your means, and so I think you really have to dive deep into your budget and see what things kind of can be set aside, what programs are working. It can't be the same old all the time. Sometimes there has to be a change. There could also be private-public partnerships to take the responsibility of paying for things off of the residents of our city. A great example of that would be pickleball. They did a great job in renovating that area. The dog park takes care of that particular piece of property. You could even look at like the rowing club. They built that gorgeous building that reverts back to the city if anything happens, but they take responsibility and expense on making sure that that is taken care of. So I think that there's ways to not raise taxes. I think to say that you would never do it, you can't ever say that you're never going to raise taxes. But in my opinion, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to not have to raise taxes while I'm there if I get a seat.
Thanks, Tracy. Let's start with you on this next question. Please give an example of an ethical dilemma you may have faced at some point in your life. How did you decide what to do?
All right, so that one's actually an easy one. It's actually more of a recent one. So in the process of bringing Cleveland Clinic to Indian River County and changing the management of our hospital, Cleveland Clinic was not my first choice, and I was pretty vocal about that. I had voted no. I thought that the residents of Indian River County, after speaking with them, wanted to have more of a tax credit come in and have a different company come in to manage that hospital. But at the end of the day, even though Cleveland Clinic wasn't my first choice, I wanted to show the residents a sign of unity with the hospital district. And so that's why at the end of the day, I ended up voting for Cleveland Clinic, because it was the unified effort of all the parties that collaborated for that. And we wanted to show the community that we fought together for this, and that we did this for their benefit, because that's what they wanted.
Thank you. Charlie, I don't know if you can hear me, but I don't know if you heard that question, but can you
Yes.
please give an example of an ethical dilemma you have faced at some point? How did you decide what to do?
If you can hear me, I can tell you what it is. It was when we were trying to sell the electric plant, and when I was on the council, I was given an opportunity to make a deal, and that was to drop my appeal for Judge Vitunik's, our Judge Canarak's ruling, in exchange for the city inviting FP&L to bid on Vero Electric. I was faced with letting people down that I had promised to do a good job for in the council versus getting the Vero Electric invitation. See, Vero Electric, FP&L was not allowed to make a bid on Vero Electric unless they were invited. So I knew that we were running out of time. And so basically I had to make a decision to exchange my position to be able to sell Vero Electric. Had I not done that, and I'll tell you the longer story sometime, but had I not done that, Vero Electric would never have been sold.
Thank you, Charlie. Ray?
Well, in my case, fortunately, I haven't encountered any ethical dilemmas in my recent past, but I'll have to revert back to my military life. I frequently would consult with and talk with some of my subordinates, and occasionally they'd tell me something in confidence. And I'm obliged to report and, if you will, deal with actions that are not appropriate. And so I did lose a relationship over this, but I had to actually report what that person had told me, and that was a difficult thing to do. But recently, unfortunately, I don't have any ethical dilemmas that I can think of.
Okay, let's start this next one with you. Let's see. Well, actually, let's start the next one with. Let's start the next one with Charlie, and then we'll
Do it
go
while you can.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we got you on the line. What role do you
Well, you
think
got me.
political parties? What role do you think political parties should have in government?
In general government, they're actually quite important, but not in city government. And I don't know if you know that my aunt is the mayor of Fort Pierce, and she was a Republican. She became a nonpartisan during the time that she was she's an office holder. She's still an office holder. And she did that because she thought that it was important for her to be able to be neutral from political parties. And even though I've been involved in political parties for a long time, there's actually, I think, too much interference in municipal elections by parties at this point.
Thank you, Charlie. Let's go to Ray next on that question.
Well, frankly, I completely agree with Charlie. I think from municipal activities like we have, I don't believe that, frankly, having a party would assist. And then it bothers me to some extent because you're attempting to serve two masters. You've got a public out there that expects you to do something. You have a party over here that expects you to do something. It may not be exactly in alignment with that. So I'm glad not to be encumbered by, if you will, a party advising me on what they think I should be doing.
Thank you, Ray. Tracy?
So it shouldn't, but it does. And I think that the voters should do their due diligence. And I think that they should learn all that they can about each candidate that's in these local races. I think it's important for them to know background and make an educated choice before they send their vote in.
I lost you again.
No, Larry, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Gosh. Okay, let's go with Ray on this question. What is the most important contribution a member of council can make to the people who elected him or her?
Well, I'll be true to your convictions, I guess. I've been very clear on my perspective, and I'm going to stay with those things. People, if I get elected, it'll be because of where I stand and with the positions I've taken, and it'll be my duty and my responsibility to stay focused on those issues.
Thank you, Tracy.
I think that being a candidate of integrity and character is very important. And I think being a good listener to the residents that elect you is a top priority. So I think that the voters don't want to have to question where their candidate's principles are, and there should be no flip-flopping. They should know that if elected, whatever candidate they chose for the principles and decisions that they think are going to represent them. And so they should be able to rely on that and know that the candidate that they've chosen to take that seat is going to follow through.
Thank you. Charlie?
Yeah, the first is, let's leave the drama to Sebastian. there's nobody on this council and no candidate that's running right now that I can't get along with and get things done, because I think that's what we need to do for our people. That's accomplish what we say we're going to accomplish, which is what I believe that I have been able to do over the past years with Vero Electric. And I even fought the county, make them give fees back. I started the Chamber of Commerce so that we could get our share of the tourism tax. So it's actually, I've set off, despite being a lightning rod, as most people call me, I've accomplished everything that I've set off to accomplish. Now, it's caused trouble, but sometimes that's what happens when you accomplish things. And I think that's the most important, is that they sent us to do something for a reason, and I would like to accomplish what I'm telling them I'm going to accomplish. And that's the three corners right now.
While we have you there, Charlie, I don't think you had an opportunity to talk about what your vision was for the three corners.
Yeah, very, very quickly. I am not in favor of the current, what's called the Standing O plan. First of all, I think it needs to be a 100-year plan that complements what we have across the river. We have the Riverside Park, we have the theater, we have the art museum, and on this side we can't put things that are like skate parks and campgrounds and apartment complexes. So I would rather have it a park than do something wrong. But I have a vision that it should be 100 years, not 10. And it should not include the current building, nor should it include the tanks that are on the other side. We have a parallel path. So I'm going to give it 2 years. I'm going to let the staff say, here's a means for our getting this done in 2 years. And either we have a clean, blank piece of property at the end of 2 years that we can then develop, or we have a plan for development. Either way, it took me 9 years to sell the plant. It's not going to take me 9 years to repurpose this property.
Thank you. Okay, that was my last question, and we're at about 47 minutes into this. So I know we promised 50. So we'll give you each an opportunity. We'll start with Tracy first, and then Charlie, and then Ray. To sort of sum up, is there anything that we didn't ask you that you'd like to tell us, that you'd like to tell the public? Start with Tracy.
So I'd like to say that I think that I have the experience in the background being on the hospital district, knowing budgets, building relationships between all the different entities in our community, that I think that I am the candidate that's going to be able to help move forward on the litigations and a collaboration with Indian River Shores and the county in doing the water, sewer, and kind of mitigating that situation. I have to be honest though, like I'm a little offended that Charlie keeps saying that he's been had a super big hand in this electric sale when he hasn't. There are other people that have collaboratively worked together outside of his 1 or 2 months being on city council, like Indian River Shores, like the city council that my husband was on, Pilar Turner, Bob Solari, many of the commissioners on the county. They all worked very hard together. Debbie Mayfield, Aaron Gross. So there were a lot of hands in this, and Charlie's coming across as though he was the big hand in all of this electric sale. And I just think that that's false. So I want to make sure that our community looks at the candidates and does their own research and make sure that they're electing candidates with integrity and character and a track record. So I hope to get their vote. And I wanted to thank you all for having this forum.
Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate that. Charlie, you're next.
Well, I'll let the little shot go by. I've kind of grown up in my old age, so I understand why the people that helped me and worked together to sell the electric plant are all friends of mine. There were many people involved in it, but I can tell you for a fact, and I'm sorry that Tracy doesn't know the story. Maybe someday I'll sit and tell her the story. I know for a fact that it would not have been sold had I not been there at exactly that time, because it never would have been able to get off the starting blocks. FP&L would not have been able to participate had we not done some very skillful, very things at the very beginning. And of course, I'm very grateful to all the other people that worked together to do that. But I can tell you for a fact that it would never have happened. We'd still be with Vero Electric had I not been there in 2009. So I understand the shared credit for it took a lot of people a lot of time and a lot of good things. So, but I do want to say that I have sort of grown over the years into being a little more tolerant. People have tried to teach me patience. Wesley Davis has tried to teach me patience, and Tony Young has tried to teach me that everything isn't worth fighting for. Some things are worth fighting for, but not everything. And I think they're right. So let's go forward and see if we can get together without taking pot shots at each other on things that we just don't understand.
Thank you, Ray.
Well, I'm currently on the city council. I think I've done an effective job over the past 2 years, and I think I've put forward a platform. I think that our voting public what it appeals to, and that's the important things that we have to get done. We've got to get our wastewater plant off the lagoon. We've got to get our stormwater system under control, and we've got to get a lot of other things done that we've already started, with Three Corners being a perfect example. And I'm ready to go on day one. And I thank you for the opportunity for this our opportunity for this presentation today. And I look for your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ray, Tracy, and Charlie. We appreciate your coming on today, and thank you for watching. You can watch other city council interviews at tcpalm.com/elections or tcpalm.com/opinion. You can also find candidate questionnaires there. So as you prepare to vote on November 2nd or before, please use TCPalm as a resource. Thank you again for coming on, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Larry.
Take care, Larry.
Thank you, guys.